Hi, and welcome to the Aspire Europe Competent Program Controls course. This module is about setting up stage gates, the key to having decent control within your program. My name is Rod Sowden, the lead author for MSP and P3M3, and also the managing director of Aspire. Stage gates are the key to higher levels of performance within any organization. And if we're looking at it from a P3M3 perspective, it's the key to being level 3 because the stage gates give you the reviews, making sure there's consistency, gathering data. They are everything and they feed into improved governance and improved controls. So it's a really important concept. Now, one of the things that we found is organizations that are doing quite nicely at level 2 want to make their next step, and the first action on the list is to implement a gate review process. But there is a really high failure rate in this, where they don't actually get it to work within their organization. So some of the reasons for this is basically their inexperience. So they failure to recognize the significance of this change, because what you're imposing is another layer of governance over projects, and they react to this. You start to get up to the situation where the sponsor has been told they're accountable for the project. Suddenly they've got this independent group checking them out. So this creates quite often conflict and resistance. It challenges the existing processes. Projects, if they're relatively autonomous, they might be doing highlight reports, but they still are freewheeling. And it's challenging that. It also challenges existing governance arrangements. So like organizational context, is the S sponsor answerable to the gate review, or are they answerable to the board, or where do they sit? Teams can cover things up in highlight reports, all right? So we've got to accept that they're going to be defensive. So therefore, the communication of the benefits and what's in it for them is really important, but also rarely happens. The other big problem is the reviewer's competence and their behaviours. They kind of quite often end up in these things as it's an opportunity for them to pull the project apart. It's not what it's all about. And even in organisations that have got gates in, some of them don't work too well because they still see it as an audit check that they filled in a load of templates, when actually the gate review is about, yep, are you where you should be? But it's also, are you doing the things that are going to make you successful? And are you learning those lessons that others are receiving? Because it's a key way of sharing lessons. So the focus tends to be backwards, not forwards, which is where it should be. The other big problem is scaling mechanisms. Now, if you have not got a system for rating your projects high, medium, or low risk, it means they all go through the same gated process. But if you've got a low risk project, it probably doesn't need to go through a gating process. So you can see in the table on the right, you need to be able to think, well, what do you do with a program? What do we do with high risk projects? What do we do with medium and low risk projects? They need to report at a different level, different levels of rigor to be followed as well. So just as a reminder, there's a high level of failure of implementing organizational stage gates. From your program perspective, you need to have them as well. And there's some things to think about. Ironically, we're all in program and project management worlds, but people fail to have a plan to implement the gates. So just thinking about the process associated with gates. We need to have a clear process that we're going to follow. There's 3 stages in any review. There's preparation, there's the actual review, and then there's the follow-up. So in the preparation, we've got to think about a schedule, a sequence of events that needs to happen. We need to get the report in from the team. We need to think about where that project is in terms of milestone status, and if it's missed a couple, why? What's the plan look like for the next stage? Stakeholder consultation, thinking about what the key questions are, but very importantly, appointing the right team, because you might need some specifics knowledge to help this happen. The review team sits. It can be quite informal. Doing a review could be half an hour or an hour or so, just thinking through what needs to happen. Where are the areas that can improve? Most likely, you're going to come up with some new risks they haven't thought of, or things they need to think about, because the review should be looking forwards, not backwards. And then the decision should be communicated, and you'd normally red, amber, or green a project after a review and take it from there. So if you haven't got a gate process already, or you're putting one in for your program or your organization, let's quickly have a think about what stage gates you need. All right, so we've tied this back to the P3M framework, which we put all our ideas into. And so the first gate that you have really is to move into concept. Yeah, and what you're looking at there is how does this fit into the organization? What commitments are made and how does this fit? And then we move into it and we look at the checks that need to be done at that gate. Are we doing something that's already happening? Because a key benefit of stage gates is avoiding duplication. Is it worth it? Do we want to spend the money to actually do the research? Does it have the right strategic fit? And then we come out of there with a confidence level, maybe you'll get your mandate to continue. So this is a very early stage gate. And if you're in a bigger organization, this is the stage gate that gives you the approval to go off and do your strategic outline business case. So it's some control of any effort going in. Stage gate 2 is the agreement to move into define. Okay, so at this point, we've got a draft brief, we've taken a mandate and we've turned it into something. Well, we might have a strategic outline business case at this moment or an SOBC. What are the kind of checks that we need to look at there? We're looking at what's the resource impact on the wider program or the wider organization. How does it fit into the governance model, budgets? Do we believe the benefits will happen? Is it being endorsed by any other scrutiny? Do we need external assurance and that kind of thing? Because what we're actually deciding there is what's the level of risk. And we got kind of the sort of outputs you'd expect. You know, you've got your RAID log, you've got your permission to move to the next stage, and maybe you've got some fixes. But the next stage is you want to move to the outline business case. As we get to stage 3, we've got our outline business case ready. So we know what we require. We've identified a few options. We're then coming up to be checked again. So again, some of the checklist things that you might look at: risk profile, viability of the business case, have all the options been properly assessed? May only be one option, depends how big, high risk it is. So there's kind of things to think about, but you can pre-plan all this to be successful, all right? You don't want too many inputs. You'll notice that it's not got a raft of project documents coming in there because all you're doing is creating bureaucracy and there's not a great raft of things coming out the other end of it. But what you are trying to do is controlling the next stage of investment where you're going to go into designing whatever the outputs are going to be. And it's got to be justified. If you're within a program, that it's justified based on contribution of benefits, contribution to the blueprint in some shape or form. Stage gate 4 is the big one because now you've designed the system and you're waiting to move into develop. So you've now got a full business case, you've done your procurement, you know how much it's going to cost, you know the implication on your enterprise, legal compliance, a different focus. So you may well have a different group of people looking at your program or project at this stage. So moving into gate 4, this is the big approval because now we know how much it's costing. And when you come out the other side of it, maybe there's a remediation plan that you need to do. But you can see that we're building the level of scrutiny and the level of approval as we go along, rather than trying to do it in an ad hoc way without the appropriate planning. And then finally, we move into delivery. We've got the budget, we're building things, we're trying to be efficient in the way that we manage it, and we've got to think about transition, business change plans. So now again, we're getting a different group of people that need to be involved in the review. But I'm sure you can pick up the idea that we systematically make sure we cover all our bases at each of the gates, because it's about protecting the organisation and helping the individuals to become successful. And then finally, we have a closure. We do our PIR, post-implementation review, making sure the benefits are there, closure reports, all that kind of good stuff that you're used to seeing in things like Prince 2 and APM. All right, so that's this last stage gate. That's how it works. And hopefully that little overview, not too heavy, into how to implement stage gates will help. But one thing to consider, there is a high failure rate. I hope that proved useful. When you're implementing stage gates, you do need to be cautious. There are elephant traps out there, as we highlighted at the start of the video, that you need to be wary of. But if you plan properly, engage the stakeholders, and everybody understands why you're doing it, you should be successful. We've worked with a number of clients who do that, and by going through it systematically, taking their time, good stakeholder engagement, and really focusing on the outcome of a gate being a positive experience, they do gain the benefits from better control and better governance and better delivery at the end of the day. So thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the module.